Here's something a bit different. Just taking a break out here. It's like 1:30 in the morning. You know, the wife goes to sleep, so I come out here to do all the fun things on the car, like wiring, because it's, you know, January 30th, so let's freeze out here with the propane tank taking my oxygen. So why don't I talk more, right? Something different. This is a Haltech install that I'm working on for my 2003 Corvette. Everybody in the world is a Holly user, and you know, I understand the benefit of having friends and local tuners who, you know, if you got somebody who understands how to tune it, if you have a problem, yeah, you have support. That's good. That's really helpful, you know, especially if you're not sure what you're doing and you don't have much experience, which, you know, we all cut our teeth on that at some point. You just got to jump in. But a lot of reading and a lot of talking to people who, you know, actually use their cars more than I have. You know, so I'm stepping up to a higher horsepower. This is a 402 LS2 with, it's going to have a V3 Ti. Pretty good sized cam and heads right now. Just a jam cam, kind of old school for 2023. But soft on the valve train, you know, medium RPM. You know, I can push it with my valve train. I can go to like 7 if I want to, as long as it still makes power. You know, I've got the Innovators West damper, so it's going to have, you know, 10% overdrive. So my pulley is going to be the same as if you ran like a 3.27. You know, so I'll be maxing out that head unit RPM pretty quick, easily by around 6,000, 6,500. But the topic here is wiring in the Haltech. So just something different. The Haltech offered, you know, the more I read about it, much more expansion and a lot more opportunity for programming with your car. This is also the 2500T in the Elite series. Now, since I bought it, the Nexus has come out. I don't have much need for the Nexus. This is a modern car. I don't need a lot of, you know, power drivers off the ECU. Not a bad thing, but as it turns out, this is also still beneficial for me because the software that comes with the Nexus can now be retrofitted to the Elite Series head units. So I don't know anything about the software. I've used EFI Live for years, and I'm a hobbyist at that, so I'm not some crack tuner, but I can go in there and get done what I need to get done. And these are just some wire diagrams for the caps. If you're looking for these pinouts, you can get these as well as the tack pinouts, as well as the Haltech conversion, like my own double check version of that, right on the Corvette forum. If you look up, I don't know what the heck I titled it. It's my username there is Tusk, T-U-S-C. You know, I have heritage, which is Tuscaroran Indian, so I don't know. I've stuck with that for years, but. If you look up that username and the term pinout and PCM or TAC module, it'll come up. It's a Excel file, and you can just easily print it out. Color-coded wires, handy. There's a lot of stuff that I found which was good. It was older, but this is handy. It's one page each. There's no chasing information. Really easy. And this is daunting to me because there's so many wires, and I already caught myself making one mistake before I finalized a wire. So. You really have to double and triple check. But this video is as much to talk about the Haltech. I think it's a benefit. Again, I have the T, so that has the torque modulation. So here I am with a 6-speed, and this one's got a modified gearing 60/60 custom with a sprayer, and then I've got a C6 Z06 rear diff with a wave track. So it'll take a lot of abuse as long as I shift it right. And again, the power, I don't know where it's going to land. Probably north of 700, give or take. And this is rigged to run ethanol. So I'm sure once we get everything shaken down and running, we can start, you know, climbing to the moon. But in a modern world where everybody out there has these 8 and 10 speed automatics, and they just make every darn car always in their power band, and nobody has to think to drive and go fast. There's no driving, or at least not as much out there. So this is a bit of a cheat. So the Elite gives you one benefit: you can do no lift shifting. So just keep your foot on the pedal, keep cranking, and as soon as the engine detects that clutch pedal starts to move, it knows what's happening, and it just changes the tune table a bit. The engine adjusts. It's not screaming off the rev limiter. and away you go. So you can no lift shift, that's saving you time. And then also because you have the torque management, which is per gear. So in each gear, you can set it by percent. There's endless variables. I've done some reading, but not recently, so I can't sit here and educate people on it. But you have just endless variables that you can use to modulate why or wherefore the engine will, continue to apply power or pull power a little bit. So this one has factory, fenders and flares there. I'm not really a fan of most wide body kits. I used to love them on the Z06 body here. I don't know. Lately, they just seem like it's like the C370s look revived, a little bit hokey. Or maybe it's more so that C5s have generally reduced in price. So for a lot of people, they're beaters, and I understand that because they have a 99 coupe out there, which I love. It's hardcore. It's held up for years, but it's a beater compared to this one, for sure. 120-something thousand miles, lived outside all the time. But what I was saying is a lot of time you see the flares, it's guys who, they're high school, college kids, or it's their first Corvette, and they're just slapping stuff around, and, it's a little goofy, a little hokey. Or they don't, they don't bother painting it, and you don't have to. I'm a big fan of run what you brung, so I have that at heart. Go beat the shit out of these things. They like it. they don't complain much, and if they do, they're easy to fix, as long as you've got some mechanical background. But it's that in-between range. Like, you either go for the clean build, which this one I'm trying to. I'm putting more money into it than I should have. I'll admit that right up front. But I know I'm going to keep this one. I love the Electron Blue. I love the Z06. This is definitely a keeper. So once the LS6 let go, yeah, we'll just keep piling money at the problem. But along the Haltech topic, this is also, daunting. If you're I'm not an electrician. I did swap an LT1 and then an LT4. These are the 96 variants into a 91 Camaro back in 99. I graduated college in a year and a half, and having worked full-time three jobs at the same time, I saved every penny. And when I graduated, what did I do? I took my 91 Camaro with a perfectly running 160 horsepower dog 305 TBI and threw that away. Took a junkyard motor, dumped it in, converted the harness, which took 3-4 months of going through diagrams, because we got the computer to run with the factory harness, with the factory gauges. So that was like combat level headache, but got it done. And that was also 99. There's no kits, there's no wisdom, there's no, you refer to thirdgen.org and everybody's got, hey, I've done this, hey, my cousin did one too. No, we had to figure out which brackets to use, adapters, and that was my first project. I started that project and pulled that engine with rental tools. I didn't even own like a ratchet set, no sockets, nothing, no knowledge. I'm just, I want a new engine. No, stupid. But got it running. It just took some time. So here I am 20 plus years later. I'm not a wiring fan. Like, I also don't like working on fuel systems, not a fan. I'll spin wrenches all day. Cool. Love installing parts, hate fixing shit, and don't like this, but I'll do my best at it. So just to share, so for all that background here that I've been jabbering, here's the wiring harness. So here's the PCM. We're in the passenger wheel well. Everything's kind of gutted. Here's a quick shot of the engine sitting there. My, what was that, Eddie Motorsports valve covers, which I customized and then had them powder coated by a friend. And I wouldn't have gone with the fast intake. I would have stuck with the LS6 if the car came with it in factory and throttle body. But since this came with it, I'm not going to sell it. It's not going to immediately crack apart or fly away. Some people think that's going to happen. It won't. And if it does, whatever. Just one more thing, So it's in its different states of development. The fuel system is complete, wiring, etc. I did it with one connection on the back of the driver rail, and in this case that's easy to do because they have slightly lower engine mounts. But that's the jewelry box next to me. It'll be a lot more fun once there's big polished supercharger sitting there. And there's thoughts, you know, the engine hopefully will take it. I think I mean, it'll take the supercharger, but the weakest link I have is the block. This is what you call project creep, and this is project creep right here that we're looking at, because it started as, well, the LS6 Blue, it was a lifter that let go, and I thought, oh, I'll just, you know, magnet out all the needles and just screw it, send it, go back to work. But when I pulled the oil pan, it had part of the lifter wall down there, so that was it. The block was junk. Initially, I was just going to go, well, I'll just dump, you know, a truck engine in, or an LS1 or LS2. Well, for whatever reason, I think maybe it was COVID, everything disappeared. I couldn't find anything at that time, like locally on Marketplace or Craigslist or anything, or any of the forum pages. I was like, what the hell, where did all these engines go? And we don't have a lot of pick and pulls up here. So I was like, well, you know what, I'll just buy a new block. So I got an LS2 block, and we've gone from there. And it was just going to be, well, I'll do pistons. Well, I got a deal on rods, you know, these Lunati signature rods. Then I'm like, well, let's go a little crazy. First, I had read some stuff, and then I've been working with Brett down in Texas. My name is Brett, 2 T's. His name is Brett, 1 T. So I call him Bray. He calls me Brettita, and that's our vibe. But I've definitely latched on to his experience. He was the first guy to get a C5 to 1,000 rear wheel. And he's definitely saved me a lot of headache, as far as, if you read forums and you think, you know, people share common knowledge and reiterate lies about cars and performance and stuff. But when you talk to people who actually build and race the cars, you're like, oh no, you don't want to do that. So he's steered me the right direction a lot of times. So I'm up here doing the work, but he's giving me, like, we'll call it the fatherly advice. We're about the same age, but, you know, just helping me from his experience perspective, which I appreciate. I try not to harass him, but it happens sometimes. So here you have this harness, and kind of like computers, most people, and cars too, most people don't know what's under the hood, don't want to touch it. And a lot of people, I think, would be hesitant to, like, put an aftermarket ECU on their car, or to even, you know, some people put the P59 ECU in here, and they'll convert the cars to run a very simple flex fuel setup. It's not the best, but it functions. So people can put a flex fuel easily on here, and the Haltech is going to manage that for me here. But what we've done, and what I've elected to do, this is a parallel install with the Haltech. So the Haltech's going to run the drive-by-wire for the throttle. It's going to completely run the engine, of course. Excuse me, but I have to pass emissions still, so this computer for the next few years still has to tell, you know, to function correctly, and, you know, indicate that all the emissions are working. I do have cats. I do have everything correct on the car. You know, nothing screwed around in that way. So it'll definitely pass correctly. But I want to have my gauge cluster work. You know, I'm not a fan of lights in my face. I don't like LCD screens. I like night driving, so the interior on this I've converted to red LEDs, even into the HVAC controls, all that. So a little overboard, but you know, again, I'm keeping the car. I'm just going to make it what I want it to be. So here's just looking at the wiring. The wiring is pretty easy. You know, once you have a list of what you got to look at, you know, how to find everything, how to identify it, color code everything, what goes where. You know, I went through and marked it, you know, which ones do I have to pull, which ones go to which harness. You see the question mark, I have to add a line there because I'm disabling the DBW. But this computer has the computer here on the car has to think it has it coming back, so we have to kind of fool it. But one thing that I will say helps, like, I'm an okay person with wiring, but having the right tools makes a difference. Pressmaster, this stripper, is amazing. So this does 12 to 28 gauge wires. So with the tooth, or not with the tooth, but with the depth setting here, you just, you know, easily adjust how far back you want to crimp. And with this setting here, you adjust, basically you're finding out, like, what the sheath or shield thickness is, and you have perfect uniform crimps, or not crimps, but strips every single time. you look like a pro. So you're not like mismatched. Some have long connections, some have short. That's great. And I did invest in a Deutsch tool. Now, if you want to look or feel like you know what you're doing with very simple little car like wiring electronics, this tool makes it very simple. So you can adjust the depth of the compression on the fitting with this wheel. This is the size adapter. You can change these out. This will adjust for the different size fittings. And this ranges, again, this goes from, what does it go from, 12 to at least 22, so 12 to 24 on this tool. And what it is you put your wire end in this hole. This guy, you squeeze it, it crimps. You can't let go. Once you start, it's, you have to complete the crimp. So it presses it from 4 sides equally. You have watertight seals on all of your electronics just from that compression. So here you see, here's some of the, I guess this would be the female end going in. So these are just hollow, and then the male end fits inside. So it's a really clean fitting. These are weatherproof. They're better than WeatherPack. Super easy to work with. So as long as you have the right tools, and that is about $300 worth of tools, you can always sell them when you're done. But wow, I mean, I did all of my fuel wiring, everything I'm doing with these pins. It's a great way to go. So if you're afraid of it, you're not sure if you're going to get it right, the tool is always going to compress this perfectly. These 4 points, if it'll focus, it just works out right. Makes it easier than it could be. And then I just use some loom and some the high heat Tessa tape to try to clean that up a little bit. But if you have to do this, and I'm hoping other people can benefit from this, and when they follow my footsteps or do their own thing, because not everybody does Holley. It's not the only game in town, and they are good. I have nothing against them. I have friends that run it successfully. No problem. They're making money on the track, and you know how that is. But if you're going to do this, it's pretty easy. You take your pins out. I mean, it's easier because I took the fender off. If you had to do this, I would still take the fender off so I could reach everything, but you could also fish all of this up under the battery, like if the battery is out. So you would have access in there. You can just do it in the engine bay if you needed to, not a problem. I have direct access now because in mid-project it's easy. So I just went through, you see all like the simple painter's tape. I just very carefully and double checked every wire. I took the back harnesses off here from the PCM, and you just trace every wire back, and I was going about 6 and 9 inches and marking it. So then I'd cut whichever ones I need to in the middle, parse them, and away we go. So here I have the injector harness, and this is the computer side, engine side. This will feed into the Haltech eventually. That's how that'll go. So trying to make this clean. But nothing to be afraid of. I mean, I hesitated for a while because I'm like, it's something you don't want to screw up. Especially because you don't want to have to go back in there. You never want electrical problems, ever, on these cars. Like, it's all about the grounds on these cars if you own one. But, yeah, so not a hard project, just a slow one. You're going to definitely take your time and get the detail done. I've got Jesus, this is a long video. I talk a lot. But, someone somewhere is going to benefit from that, even if only 2 people look at this in 20 years. But over here is the main harness itself. So this is the Haltech harness. I think it's a 32 pin and a 26 pin, or 34 and 26, I forget. And the rat nest that comes out of there, which I've just kind of let spool on the ground for now. So that'll all go in the car. I'm not a fan of keeping it in the engine bay, but here it is as it sits. Hopefully we'll hear this run, this spring. This is end of January, so maybe another month or 2. I do have to send the exhaust back, waiting for them to send me the shipping because it was an error. We'll get that straight. But yeah, that's it. Don't be afraid. Dive in, The hardest part is the start, and then it's just slow and steady. But this has been 20 minutes. I'm going to get back to work. So don't be afraid to hit this up. You know, try to do the Haltech or Terminator or Dominator, whatever you're going to try. Go for it. But, you know, the tools help. And maybe having some guides where you don't have to go blind or, you know, do something that, like, I found a couple of errors on the Haltech one that I got as a file. I don't know if it came directly from Haltech. I got this, I purchased the setup through Brett or Bray. So there's a couple of little errors which I fixed, but, you know, always pay attention. Anyway, just one of those things. This is me trying to avoid work, so I guess I better get back to it. Take care.